Hello and welcome to the Ink and Echo podcast, episode 39. And I don't mind telling you that both of the hosts here are fairly worn out at the moment. But hey,
we're still going to do a good job for you.
Oh yeah. We're present. We're just physically tired and drained. So our guests today are Tim and Betony, or Betony. I had some trepidation on the interview, which you'll hear about how to... a trepidation? Am I using that right? I don't
think
know.
that's right.
Is
it's funny
okay.
that the first time you used a word like that correctly, you second-guessed yourself. You could have just gone with it.
I'm just losing it. Anyway, Tim and Betony Coons, and they do something together. They're a husband and wife team with 4 children. And they do something called Giants and Pilgrims with the subtitle sort of is a marriage of art and music. So Betony is an artist in primarily painting, but all kinds of mixed media as well. And Tim is a musician, and they do some genuinely awesome work together.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm a terrible host. I was not able to be on the interview due to internet problems, and I haven't even listened to it yet. So I'm going to be hearing it for the first time along with listeners. So, and I'm excited to do so. I actually skimmed through it, and I did hear you say the word mortality, which I was like, okay, good. Josh is talking about death again.
You know we're on the right track. Yeah. Yeah. They were lovely people. You know, and I went into this blind, having never met them or even experiencing their work other than like a couple days before I met them. But it was awesome, and we spoke in their in Betony's art studio, which was just, I mean, like Andy, you would have really liked this environment. Yeah, it's just one of those really comfortable, beautiful spaces that
promotes creativity.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you relaxed as soon as you walk into it.
Awesome.
But yeah, I did want to mention, so this episode I had to commute to Greeley. I mean, I offered to do this. It's about 90 minutes north of Denver. And so, you know, there was a bit of clunkiness due on no part to the guests. But my recording rig was like strung all over the room. I had Tim and Betony handing back and forth a microphone, so there's a little like burp, 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 burp on the mic. But so, you know, try to overlook the audio technicalities and just, or technical difficulties, whatever it would be, because we get to some good places.
You get to mortality. That's all I know. Which is great.
And there is, last thing I'll say. Oh yeah, and Andy couldn't be on because internet was slow at their place, and there is a break in the middle of the conversation where it chops off because they had to go check on their babysitter and come back, and we picked up in the middle of something without really referencing it. So anyway,
we know about that life, kid life.
I have
compassion for that all the way.
Right,
I get it.
Yes. Okay. I'll stop there. So, Andy, we have two new patrons to thank.
Yes.
Which is badass. It feels good we thanked one on last episode. Now we've got more. Just keep them coming.
Yes, please.
So this week we've got Ryan Vanden Havel. Ryan, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right.
If and Ryan not, that was a great try. I salute you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ryan is one of the guys who has emailed me personally about how Charlotte's Web worked so well for him.
Oh, sweet.
And the other, who I saw just minutes before getting on the call, is Joel Paul. So thank you, Joel.
2 first names.
I know, I was going to say 2 first names. Keep it easy. So thank you guys so much. And patrons, I just want you to know, specifically the people who back us, like, please be in touch if there's anything you want from us, like as far as what we put on the Patreon page. If there are things that you'd like more of, or to see or hear, or, you know, because Andy and I still feel like we're kind of feeling our way through what to even do with that.
Totally.
But we want to make it worth your while and worth your money. So
yeah. And if you want to be able to tell us what to do on the Patreon page, you should become a patron, which you can do at inkandecho.com/Patreon or patreon.com/inkandecho. Take your pick. whichever one of those URLs you like better.
Pick one, click it, or tick it.
Pick it, click it, and tick it. That's the phrase you got to know. So great.
Well, Andy, you've got some stuff drumming up in the background. Are you allowed to talk about any of that?
Yeah,
Just
I can talk about some of it.
Excitement surrounding the album.
Yeah, I mean, the pre-sale, pre-release thing is still going on. I got my first review in just yesterday, which we're recording this Sunday, so this is coming out tomorrow. It came out Saturday. I kind of reached out personally to a bunch of, I mean, they're not huge blogs, but they're people who I have known over the years in the ambient genre, and that I appreciate what they do. So first one came out from a site called Stationary Travels, and it was like really, really good and made me feel very nice. And yeah, the guy spent a lot of time listening, obviously, you know, dove into the concept of nostalgia behind it, and really, I don't know, it's just fun when, not that I care that people get the same concept that I'm trying to put forth, like people take whatever they want from it, that's fine. But it's just cool when people do take the time and then still, you know, and even come out with a similar thought that I had going into it. That's cool. And, you know, it's fun when people take the time and then say nice things about it. So I'm thankful to that and hoping for more. And so, yeah, I mean, before I go further, you know, lowercasenoises.com to pre-order. And actually, pre-order is available on Bandcamp now, too, if you want to just do it there. But all the cool physical packages are at lowercasenoises.com. Yeah, but I mean, the most exciting thing right now is that my PR guy, which is weird to say that I have, right. He secured a pretty big premiere that's happening this upcoming Friday. I won't say what site yet, but it's a pretty big deal site. So I'm very curious to see what that does for me and what they say about it. Because it's like by far, by many orders of magnitude, the biggest site that will be hosting any of my stuff. Yeah. So, right on. Yeah, I have no idea what to expect. And from my previous experience, typically, I'll come in with a low expectation, because in general, anytime when I've thought, oh, this is going to be a big break or a big deal, it is not. So I'm excited about it, but at the same time, not putting any eggs in that basket. So just curious to see what happens there for sure.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a good way to look at it, but still, I mean, it seems to me like this release is going to have more eyes and ears on it than anything prior, which is exciting. I hope so.
Yeah, and I've been doing other podcasts, like I did the Break It Down podcast with Matt Carter, and that was really fun. And I did the Don't Feed the Trolls podcast, which isn't out yet, but hopefully will be soon. And that was really good too. So yeah, it's been fun to talk about it. And yeah, I think you're right. I think there's some more eyes on it. And yeah, just kind of waiting to see what that does, if anything. Right. So yeah, and I've just been, well, I mean, I don't want to keep talking about myself, but I've found myself the past couple weeks, I mean, especially coming out of last week's episode where I kind of outlined my depression. And so, okay, I'll address this first because I mentioned last week, like my tax situation where I had to like take out a loan to pay my taxes. Right. And it was something kind of crazy happened in the sense that I got the biggest music license that I've pretty much ever gotten. And it's basically going to wipe out the loan that I had to take out to pay my taxes. So that's amazing and helps me feel a lot better going forward financially.
Right.
So I was, like I said, incredibly thankful for that. But on top of that, I was just going to say, like, I've been so busy the past couple weeks, and it's been really good for me, I think. So like every day, like I finish my day, I'm like, that was full of, because I'm trying to book this tour that's happening starting in the end of June. I'm trying to send my album out for review to certain places. I'm getting music videos edited and put together, trying to finish up your songs for your soundtrack and all that stuff, which I'm, very close to, by the way. But I've been so much busier than I have previously, and it feels good. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out ways to like sort of keep it this way if I can. So,
Totally.
and like I said, I don't want to talk about this too long, but I think what's going to happen is that I'm going to be opening up for Emery on a couple runs of theirs, so that like at the beginning of June and end of July. So basically what that means is in the next month, in the month of May, I've got to get my tour shit together, like all figured out. I've got to get, your song's done, which will be done like within a day or two. I've got to get, I have a 4-song contract with a licensing agency that I've got to write songs for them. Levi the Poet wants me to do some more work for him in this month.
Ugh.
And
yawn. Just kidding.
But that's a lot to do in a month, but I think I'll be able to do it. And it's just like, every day I wake up, it's like, okay, I've got things to do. Like I got to just jump into it immediately. So, I guess, I'll keep everybody updated on how I'm doing mentally and productively in the next month or so, because that'll be interesting.
Right.
And I'm, like I said, busier than I have been a lot previously. So
yeah,
that's me. That's me now.
I think that's really good for you right now. I think that's what you needed. Like,
totally.
even in comparison to last week, like you said, you seem more like yourself and more upbeat and kind of, I don't know, in a weird way, relaxed and just not neurotic or
Well, and I wonder, and maybe this is taking it too far. It's like, I don't know how much of it is like, am I just distracting myself from something else that's going on just by being busy? I don't know. I think there's value in like I said, ending the day and being like, here's what I did today. Like I finished a music video. I finished one of the songs for your movie. Like I was able to point to things that I finished in a day, and that's something I haven't really been able to say very often previously. So that's good. But at the same time, I'm just wondering how much is like, oh, well, I'm okay now only because I'm distracting myself with all this work that I have to do. So I don't know. It's going to be an ongoing process. I still think I want to like seek out help in some way. I don't want to just like, because I'm feeling good today, assume that everything is fixed, because that's not how human beings work. So
yeah, totally. I think that's a good awareness to have, because also I know this isn't at all what you're saying, but like keeping up busyness for the sake of busyness wouldn't solve anything either, right? And that's not what you're doing, but
totally. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing too. Like, so Levi the Poet was supposed to come up here yesterday to record some stuff, and he got stuck in a shutdown freeway for like 2 or 3 hours. And I was like, okay, well, I have time to kill, so I started working on this music video, and I got basically the whole thing done in like 3 hours, and I was super stoked about it. So even though something happened that messed up my schedule, I was like, okay, I still made use of it, and that felt good. And at the end of the day, I did the music video, and I recorded with him eventually when he got up here. And I was like, I got a lot done today, and it felt good, even for Saturday. So,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough about me. What's up with you, dude? What are you doing on this beautiful Sunday afternoon?
Yeah. Well, so on this past Friday, I got to do a rare business trip for me. I only get to travel like twice a year for my job. It just doesn't come up very often.
Do you enjoy it when it happens?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I love it. Love it. Probably because it's rare.
Yes.
So yeah, on Friday, so it was a same day to Phoenix and back flying. And so on the return flight, it was my plane was late getting in from California or somewhere. Okay. And there was also a storm happening in Denver, so it got double delayed. It ended up only being about 90 minutes, but so I was stuck in the terminal, and I had already eaten dinner and stuff, and so I was like, well, I'm going to go get a beer at this little place that was near my, the gate.
For like $9. Nice
I think that's exactly what it was. Yeah. Yeah. 1 pint was $9, but
wow.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's fine. It was worth it. But so I got to talking to this guy, probably around my age, maybe a little younger. And I've very rarely drum up conversations with strangers.
Right.
But this guy, like, this place was so packed, the bar, that he and I just had to stand like in the middle of a bunch of tables. Not even at a bar. We were just like in the middle of outer space. And so anyway, yeah, we got to chatting. Just long story short, this guy, his job is running power and generators for big festivals like Coachella and Burning Man.
Oh, wow.
And so his team will go out a week early, set up all the power, and then once it's set, the employees basically get to attend the festival and just party.
And just make sure there's power.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, wait a minute. You've been to Burning Man numerous times. I was like, please tell me what on earth actually
Get him on the
happens
podcast. I want to hear about Burning Man too.
I should have thought of that. And I mean, he didn't have anything too wild to say, or but that festival is just such a strange anomaly to me.
Yeah.
Or just a bizarre piece of our culture that nothing else like it quite exists. And
right.
It's, I mean, a regular ticket I think is at least $1,000. I think it's like $1,200.
Wow.
And the packages go up from there. You can get like a private RV and really, and celebrities go there, like tech,
right.
big guys in the tech world will go there, very wealthy people. And I don't know, it was just what he was telling me was, I mean, it all sounds pretty like Eastern religion, mystical, hippy-dippy, bizarre shit. Decent amount of drug use and psychedelics, and the alcohol flows freely, it sounds like. But I didn't realize once you enter the camp, money is meaningless. Everything is free.
Wow.
And there's like I don't know, like there's these 10 or 12 principles that go along with the festival that everyone is supposed to sort of follow. And but yeah, there'll be camps. There's a camp that does like red brick pizzas, like they set up an entire red brick stone oven.
Wow.
And they give out pizzas, or there's like bars that'll.
Is it free or is it like a bartering thing? Because for some reason I feel like I've heard of like a bartering system that goes on there, but I could be wrong.
That may be true as well, that you trade something. But the way he explained it was like, I mean, within your own little camp, everybody just kind of takes care of each other's needs.
So if you live next to Pizza Dude, you can just walk up and be like, "Hey, I would like a pizza now." Is that how it works?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
And they do, I mean, obviously, so the man that they burn every year, that changes. And then the temple is also, he was showing me pictures. It's an enormous structure, like 3 or 4 stories of wood that gets burned at the end. Wow. If you could just imagine what a large fire that would be in the middle of the desert.
That sounds super mesmerizing to watch a huge structure burn down. I would maybe pay $1,200 just to watch a large building burn down.
Well, and he said, what's interesting, so when the man burns down, it's like a big ball breaker party, and there's a DJ playing or something, and it's just everybody dancing in the middle of the firelight. But he said when the temple burns, which the temple is where people like put things from their past that they want to rid from their lives, so it like burns literally and it's gone. He said it's dead silence the entire time. So it's like this very supposedly spiritual thing.
So is there a meaning to the whole experience aside from what you just said, or is it kind of like you come and make what you want of it situation?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little more of that. You make it what it means to you. I mean, to some degree, it seems like they're perpetuating this idea of like community and I don't know, being free from like the weight,
capitalism or something
from the rest of the year, even relieving stress. And I mean, it's
like the purge. It's like the day you can murder people. It's like you can party and do drugs and have free pizza, and then you'll be good. fueled up.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just fascinating to me. And it sounds a bit volatile. I mean, he said they have like their own police. They have there's undercover police. That it's got its own airport, but so there's like people monitoring, because if I like, you can only imagine there's some wacky shit that probably goes on, or some very bad things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, from a objective, just looking at it outside, it's like I would love to go for the experience, but I also know myself well enough to know it probably wouldn't be good for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I'd probably get myself in trouble.
If you could have like an observer pass, like you're not allowed to engage in anything, and you just kind of live in like a floating bubble that's above everything or something, and just like observe. That would be fascinating, just to like be able to zoom in and see what certain people are doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And that, I don't know, that would be insanely fascinating, I would think.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. The idea of going to something like that is kind of terrifying on multiple levels.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's all I had, but it was, I mean, what a interesting connection. And
do you
love talking.
I mean, going back, do you love, well, I mean, you said you liked going on this trip for your job, but how do you feel about being in airports? Because I kind of love it still, and that's because I haven't flown enough.
Yeah, for the most part, I do as well.
Right.
Because it's a chance to read and usually get some good food or a beer, like I said.
I always love...
So yeah, I like it a lot.
I love situations where you're kind of stuck and you can't do very much. Like when I was flying to Seattle in December last year, and my flight got delayed too, so I just sat at some sports bar. I was in Denver, actually. I sat at a sports bar and a Denver football game was on. Like, this is kind of fun to like be with a bunch of Denver people watching a Denver football game, and I didn't talk to anybody, but it was just... So there's nothing else for me to do. I don't feel guilty about not really being productive, because there was nothing to do and nothing I could change about my situation. So like relinquishing control in those situations feels really good to me, assuming that's not what your entire life is made out of. But
right.
Yeah, I have not flown or traveled so much that it's annoying, which I like. I hope I never get to the point where it's a burden or it's annoying. So whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. It simplifies what you're able to do in kind of a good way. So
yeah.
Well,
all right. Anything else
from
before
us.
Okay, good. So you have an intro you want to do for them, or are you good?
No, let's just move on to our conversation. So this is Tim and Betony Coons of Giants and Pilgrims.
Cool.
My dreams still howl, my dogs still growl. The pack is running faster every hour. Your boxing shadows. You're not the
So you guys, I know hardly anything about you. I mean, I've looked things up online, of course, but you were referred to us by one of our listeners and a friend of yours. So just for the sake of our listeners, can you say what you both do and what Giants and Pilgrims is?
So the tagline is Giants and Pilgrims is a marriage of art and music.
Yeah.
But basically for years, I've been a musician. Really my whole life I've been drawn to music. And followed just, within music, you can have all these different avenues of, you can be a teacher. There's church work that's involved with it in my life. And then also writing your own things, producing things. And so I've been doing that for a while. And Benny and I think we'd been married around 7 or 8 years, and we'd never really done a project together. Mm-hmm. And my wife has been an artist her whole life, and had worked on paintings and mixed media things, but also digital and graphic design projects. And so we said, okay, well, if we were to do something together, what would we do? And so this began this idea of having a project where it'd be a painting series and then an album. And basically, I kind of transferred my ideas of what I was doing as a singer-songwriter just into that. And so I haven't released any albums under Tim Coons since we started doing Giants and Pilgrims.
Okay.
It's been 3 projects now. We did one called Almanac Number 1. That was the first one. More about family and love and proven love. And then the second project was called Becoming. Mm-hmm. And it was about how the soul is dynamic. We are always growing and understanding we never really grow up. It's a constant process. Mm-hmm. And then the most recent was called Bellwether. And Bellwether the album is still getting released over the process of this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Comes out in 3 parts.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And but the painting series was completed and just came out last month.
Okay.
And just I'm a huge fan of my wife. You don't have to talk me into it.
Yeah, I'd say our process of figuring out how to put something that is time-based, like music, and that's, obviously not tangible, and how to collaborate and put that with something that's very much a physical creation process of making a painting or a piece of artwork, and how to put those 2 creative processes together. Just because naturally being married, we're constantly bouncing things back and forth between the 2 of us in terms of ideas and brainstorming. And so it was kind of just a natural progression of, okay, so we've been working as creative partners for a long time. How do we take that to the next step and create projects that are more tightly married in terms of the actual pieces and the stories that we're telling.
Right. And I'm sorry, it was how long ago that you started this together, Giants and Pilgrims specifically?
Almanac Number 1 was released, I think, 2014 or 2013.
Okay, so relatively recent.
Yeah, just the last few years that we've decided to start doing this.
Right.
And we did a Kickstarter for Almanac Number 1 and released that around 2014. And then Becoming was really recent. I mean, it was like right afterwards. The next year we did 2015, maybe 13 and 15. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to clarify, so Giants and Pilgrims is this mix of music and art, but the music side, Tim works with a lot of different, really incredible musicians. And I'd like to say that I am one of them, but I am not. Although I have sang on a track before. But I think I often get credit for singing on projects that it's not me. No, I'm fully the visual side. And then Tim has the opportunity to work with a lot of different people. But
right. Yeah, well, the art fully speaks for itself and holds up all its own. So even if you don't have the singing credits. So in setting out to do this, what was your desire? I mean, was it just purely something for fun, something to explore together, to bless other people? Or was it, was there any, to use a dirty word, like commercial side, or desiring to, grow a fan base and reach more people?
To make millions and millions of dollars.
Yes, that's what we're all in our art for.
Yeah, exactly. The best way to make a lot of money is art and music.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag winning.
The why behind that's a really difficult question for me to answer. And as you're asking it, I was like, I don't have a good reason for why, other than compulsion.
Yeah.
Like I have been compelled to write music and songs, and I've longed to get better at that, to communicate a sense of story or feeling, or just that internal universal truth that you want to share that with people, and for them to say, "Oh, me too, I resonate." And I would say that's probably an extremely driving force for me is to be part of a conversation, to create something that is beautiful, that people can enter into, and can walk away from and have their own experience with it.
Right.
When if someone says, I loved that song, or my favorite moment in the concert was this, like, I'm always deeply honored because they're bringing themselves to that and taking their own bits and pieces of story out of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a funny question because I feel like it's not the way I work in terms of I like if I'm making a piece or my creative process just in general, I feel like it's kind of backwards. And I wish that I was that artist that had the incredible idea and then you just execute it. But I actually have felt, and as I've gotten to know myself better, that and the way I explain it to people is that I feel like my process is more of an excavation. And so it's like I put all these pieces together and I feel pulled in a certain way, but I really have no idea where I'm going. And it's not until I start to put it all together and actually do the work that it starts to be revealed as to what I'm uncovering and what the story is and what the piece is. And so ironically, it's kind of the same for our process as a couple as well in terms of our creative journey, and that all I can do is sort of follow this this pole in a certain direction creatively and go towards it. And as much as it probably drives Tim especially crazy, sometimes that pole is, it's literally like, I need to, build this thing for our garden, or I really need this new tool to learn how to finger knit. I mean, I don't know. It's like just sometimes it can be really random tangents. And it's not until a few steps down the line that I realize how those little bits and pieces fit together and how they're telling this bigger story. And so in terms of end goal, I don't quite feel like we have that figured out yet. And it's more sort of working through this process. Although I love the projects we've done, I still feel like we're figuring out, how do these pieces fit together, and what is the larger story we're telling, and what is the, process that we're revealing here.
Right. Do you spend any time, being concerned about that, or is it just kind of do what comes naturally to you, and that's enough?
Concerns over what?
Concerned about presenting some larger sort of arc or definition of what this whole thing is, or because I think some people, some artists specifically, have some degree of anxiety. I hope I can articulate this well, but an anxiety about just how they present themselves and who they're showing themselves to the world to be. Yeah. And so they nitpick and obsess over what they're putting out so that it comes out just right.
No, I get that. And I have great admiration for those people. I like I see what they're doing and it's like, oh, that's great. I think our work is much more autobiographical, and then it's also a little bit more open house. Like whereas for a while even, and here's an example, I wasn't sure how to talk about being a father in music and how to have that be a part of the artwork, because I would look and hear what are the rivers of current music or writing or different things saying, and like you just don't talk about parenthood. Like it's just not usually in there. Right. Maybe because it's a universal truth that not everybody hits with, or maybe because the moment you start talking about it, it gets saccharine. And it's just too much. It's too sweet. It's over emotional or I don't know why, but it was something for me to think about of like, like if I write this about my daughter, does that make it a bad song all of a sudden, or does it discredit it in some way? And but I just I guess I don't have the luxury of editing myself. When it comes to our life, it's just kind of like, this can be autobiographical and I'm proud of it. And so I'll let it speak for itself, and hopefully it will resonate with a good group of folks.
Yeah.
One of my really close artist friend mentors told me one time that the things that are the most personal are the things that become the most universal. And so that's something that I've really held on to in terms of the making work. And the other thing is I mean, I have 4 children, 2 of which are under 3 years old, and it's real chaotic, and trying to get work done is it's kind of a miracle in itself if anything does get created. And so it used to be that I would just make something because, oh, it's pretty. I wanted, just wanted to make it. And now I really don't want to make anything unless it means something to me. And so, I was saying earlier that like the process of making something, the meaning kind of reveals itself to me, but that doesn't mean it's not, that it becomes meaningless. It's more that I discover a lot about myself and what I'm saying through the process of creation. But it's really, in fact, the pieces that I dislike the most of my own work that I've made are the pieces that don't have as much meaning for me. And it's, even though they may be pretty, I don't like them because they don't mean anything. And it's the pieces that I've done that are most personal and the pieces maybe that I was most nervous about sharing with the world because they were so personal. Not to overshare, but pieces about miscarriage or pieces about just like hard family histories, but also really positive things. Not that it has to be hard things, but just the pieces that told the strongest stories for me. It's like I just did this piece about tables, and it was a painting, and I really love to cook and homemade meals or something that's like been passed on through my whole family. And the piece had plates from each of my from each generation. So it has like my grandmother's plate and my mother's plate that she would, serve Thanksgiving meals on. But then it has Tim's grandmother's plate and Tim's mom's plate. But then I also, incorporated all these recipes of our family bread recipe that we made. And like, no one knows the stories behind all that, so they just look at the picture and they're like, oh, it's a pretty picture of the top of a table. But incorporating that was so meaningful to me and thinking about this passed down history of so many stories and so many hands going through this simple ritual of preparing food that nourishes us, and just how beautiful that was, and how many just stories were passed on that way. Anyway, so it's what I've realized is that I have no interest in creating work that doesn't mean anything to me, but I've also come to understand that the things that mean the most to me connect most with others as well.
Right. And I'm sure that's advantageous to the final pieces, to the work that, because it's just more naturally drawn out of oneself. I do want to mention oversharing doesn't exist on this show. We like to get to the vulnerable shit as quickly as possible. You guys can cuss, by the way, if it occurs to you to do so. So something on that note, to go fairly deep, fairly quickly, and you can share or not share as much as you want, but Betony, in explaining how your art is like an excavation, have there been periods or trends that you've seen in your finished work that's like, that was a very dark period, and so this is what was coming out of me because of this, or alternately, the lightness and joy, and you don't have to be specific, but I'm just curious if you've seen those trends in your work.
I'm a slow processor. Sometimes I have to sit.
Oh, please. We can cut out breakpoints too. So take your time. Yeah.
I can also answer while you're thinking, because my immediate thoughts were. It's been some of the moments when I feel the most raw and down that some of my favorite work has come out of that. Yeah. And which I've never been a firm believer of, now I'm in a bad mood, I'll go write something. Yeah. Right. That never quite worked for me. Mm-hmm. But when our first daughter was born, I had a huge loss of faith and a kind of a redefining of what my own faith is, and deconstruction, and then very slow reconstruction. And I'm working within that church setting during this time, but it was just one of those things of like, I had seen that visceral experience of holding my daughter and had this, and it was like, oh, okay, we're all going to die. Yes. and it was like in the midst of this life, it was like, oh, okay, I've passed on my genetics and we're going to die. And then like I had this like overwhelming sense and feeling of like, and nothing will happen. Like there's no heaven, there's no hell. Like, and so I had to step back and say, oh, okay, like if that's where I'm at, then I need to process this and talk through it. And of course I began writing a lot of music dealing with those intense doubts. And to me, it became one of my favorite collections of songs, and then I'm looking at times when things were really, really good and flowing well. It's almost as though in those times I made easier decisions on the music because I felt at ease and I didn't dig deeper and harder into what I was expressing and why.
Right.
And so the music, I think the question earlier of like, what is it about your past pieces that you don't like? I think that's a great question because like my thought was, oh, I don't like it when the music, it sounds too easy or too, what's the word? As though you've made choices that were very expected. And
sure.
Yeah.
Sort of following a trend as opposed to breaking out of a mold.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I don't want to speak ill of genre, but like if I go watch a blues band, I'm like, I've heard a lot of blues.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to hear someone take the form and break it and have something fresh and new that they're saying through it more than I want to hear someone be really great at guitar.
Right.
And which is, hard on musicians, but I was thinking that was looking back at my art of the pieces that I'm most happy about is probably the ones that are most honest.
Yes.
And raw.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was just thinking through in terms of process, like sort of those moments that were surprising, and talking about that feeling of excavation. And I feel like in terms of my faith and my beliefs, I'm always sort of in this unknown place. And it's not anything we need to go into, but it's just sort of this, I never quite know which side I sit on or what exactly I believe, but I have found that in terms of creative process, there's this letting go that happens, and when I can let go the most is when I feel like I kind of sense the divine the most, or that I come to these surprising understandings. And I think that's why I love to create, is because like I said, I discover more about myself, but I also feel like I can happen upon these, probably just tiny epiphanies, but for me, they're these little epiphanies. And it's these funny moments. Like the example that kind of came to mind was that one of the things I struggle with in my work a lot is the passage of time and having a hard time holding on to that. And so I have this older piece that I did a few years ago called The Passing of Days, and it's this picture of this elephant, and it's weighed down. It's a tall, skinny piece, and it has all these windows and doors stacked on top of its back, and the elephant is kind of kneeling on one knee, and it's kind of, you can't quite tell if it's standing up under the weight or if it's being sort of pressed down under the weight. And all the windows and doors are different times of day. And it's kind of this idea of like the elephant never forgets, and is able to sort of hold on to this, but kind of, is it able to hold on to this? But for me, like having children, especially, there's this like painful, feeling and this like poignancy that exists in the like, I can't hold on to this. Like I can't stop time. We try to take a million photos. We try to, write down memories, like keep baby books, do whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like it's all, it is ephemeral, and it is fleeting. And it's like every grandparent and parent ever, when you have a new baby, comes up to you and they say, "Oh, savor this time. It's not going to last." And you get tired of hearing that phrase, but at the same time, you're like, it's not. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I have this piece that's like about that struggle, and this series that Tim and I just did about, which is called Bellwether. I kept having these sort of time metaphors and time imagery kind of come through it. And so throughout the series, there's all these clocks. And what was funny is that like that wasn't evident to me when I started. I wasn't realizing that was something I was exploring. And it's interesting because the very first piece in the series was this prairie piece, which ironically is in my studio right now. This prairie piece, and I did that before I did any of the other pieces, and I finished the series, and by the time I was done with all, I think 16 pieces in the series, I realized that, after I was done, that this time metaphor was something that I was struggling with and coming back to, and that was, there was all these clocks throughout the whole series. And then it was funny because I went back and I looked at the very first piece I had made, this prairie piece, and right in the center, like hidden in all these flowers and plants, was this tiny little clock. And to
listeners, I'll confirm that it's there. There's a clock.
It is. There's a tiny clock. And what's funny is that I have no memory even of putting that in there. And I'm sure when I put it in, I had no idea why I was putting it in. But then it's not until later, when everything was created and I knew that this was, just this theme that was playing out, that I then rediscovered that, oh, I put this tiny clock in there.
Yeah. Goodness. Fascinating. Excellent answer. I wanted to make note of when my daughter was born, had a very similar experience there in the delivery room the first time that I held her, of realizing, oh my, this is like, I had a flash, like I felt like a crazy person a little bit, but just a not a literal vision, but just a sense of, this is going to be an old woman someday, presumably. This little person that I helped make, they're going to get old and die. And so there is a very curious realization of mortality that set in for me anyway, and obviously for you. And I don't know, I think that is, I've come to be more comfortable with that and view it as kind of a gift or a blessing, or it calmed me down a little bit about death and about the realization that this all ends for all of us. Anyway, to get super morbid, but I like thinking about that kind of stuff.
I do too. Yeah. I just heard a story on the BBC driving late at night about death cafes. Have you heard of this? It's people across, and it's all around the world, but it's like, it started in Switzerland, and it's people who get together to just tell stories about death. And because we're not allowed to talk about it in Western culture. Sure. Like, it's just something we're very, very removed. It's taboo. You don't talk about it. And so people like get together with strangers, and they're like, well, let me tell you, like, when my grandfather passed away, this is what happened. And like, they just want to talk about it. And I was listening to the stories. I was like, this is my life.
No, hilariously, 2 days ago, I was in the grocery store parking lot, and a woman handed me a kitten through the window of my car. And it was just such a bizarre, I'd literally been just telling a friend, like, we're not getting any more cats ever. We're never getting any more pets. And then it's like I pull up to the grocery store and this woman just passes this kitten to me, and I couldn't say no. And it was the weirdest thing, but the kitten was really sickly from the moment we got it. We took it to the vet. We did what we could. It had been probably taken from its mother too soon. And yesterday morning, or like at 10 o'clock the night before, actually, the kitty died, and we had to bury it. And it was funny because we had this cat for, less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
And it was just heartbreaking. And it was this, oh yeah, life is so fragile, and it's so beautiful and delicate. And we thought about lying to our children and telling them that someone came and picked the cat up. But then we were like, that's wrong. Like, it's better for them to have this experience with death, and I maybe regretted it a tiny bit when after breakfast, there was literally a wailing wall and all of them were it was so dramatic that and it was so sad, but at the same time, Tim and I were just kind of laughing over to the side because it was just horrible and heartbreaking. But it's like those moments when you have this, you have this understanding and this reminder of oh yeah, everything's so breakable. That in some ways you appreciate everything so much more too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if the kids were all under 3 years old or so, we would have said,
sure.
oh yeah, the person came and picked her up.
Right.
But it was like, okay, Lucy's 7. And now it's time.
That's not gonna fly with her.
Yeah, it's not gonna fly.
Be wait a minute.
And it was just now it's time to process this. And so, yeah, we processed it together, and I was really glad we did. Yeah, the wailing wall was intense. The 2-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 7-year-old were all just wailing.
Yes. That traumatic but necessary part of life. Coming to that realization. Yeah. Yes. Betony, what do you do with your work when it's finished? Have you had gallery shows, or is it just for you and it?
I sell it all, which is a little mostly because it needs to move on. I'd rather other people get to enjoy it than it just, sit in my studio and get dusty. So I don't really keep anything. But Tim and I have had this discussion before in terms of the difference of our artworks and our art forms, in that Tim can write a song and he can sell CDs or, sell his music online, and it still exists. He can perform that song over and over again, and it's still here. Whereas, I could take a photograph of something, but once I sell a piece, it's gone. I don't ever see it again. And so it's kind of this funny thing of sometimes, especially when something is deeply personal, it can be really difficult sometimes, especially if it hasn't sat with me very long, to sell it.
What's a piece that you have regretted selling here recently?
I don't know. Whatever piece I most recently created.
Yeah.
Is the piece that, so there's been stories and pieces that I had a hard time letting go.
Sure.
But I don't, my grandmother's a hoarder. And I think that's definitely in my genetics. And so I try to really fight against that. So I don't, it's more for me the process of the making versus the hanging on to. So I've kept a couple little things, like, a painting I did for my daughter before she was born.
Yeah.
A couple little ones, but mostly they go have lives of their own.
Right. And having 4 children as you do, what is your, simplest way to put it is, how do you find time to do these things? And do you get down on yourself for not being productive enough, or for having the urge to go make art and not just simply not having the time?
This is probably the number one question I get asked.
Right. Well, on my end, I've been shocked by how productive we have been. I looked over the music that I've released in the last 8 years, and it's almost an album a year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I was, thinking to it, I was like, how do we do that? But it's a lot of, when what fuels it is just this wonderful desire and compulsion to create that energy is there, in some ways. And so, I'll track things late at night after the kids have gone to bed, and go and find a space to do that, and then set little dates for myself with a recording studio and things like that. But for you, Betony, how do you produce?
It really is a question I get asked a lot. My mom had 5 kids, and I grew up on an apple orchard in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. And my mom was an artist, and she stopped doing art when she had a big family. And the more children I have, the more I totally get that.
Yeah.
And actually, I love my mom gave me a huge gift. We were all unschooled, which is the really hippie version of homeschooling. And kind of just roamed free. Anyway, she stopped doing art, though, and I always have kind of vowed to myself that I was never going to stop doing that just because I had kids. But the problem is you have to get really creative with how in the world to get stuff done, especially on a deadline with 4 small children, because really just getting through a day and having, getting the dishes done, much less like the house picked up or creating something is kind of miraculous. So I wrote a blog post on this, and, sometimes it's less true, sometimes it's more true, but one of the ways that I found to get stuff done is by bringing my kids into the process. And so when I'm working on something, either they're working alongside me, or I have to let go of some control in terms of exactly where I wanted to go with it and let them literally work alongside me, which is surprisingly sometimes some of my best work. And by work alongside me, I mean literally let them paint on my canvas and stick things down. And so, we've been talking about this prairie piece, and it just happens to be in front of me in the studio. But there is a whole side there where I had sketched in flowers, and my daughter Harriet painted all the lines in. There's another piece in this new series called Dark Fields, and my daughter Lucy painted the whole background in because she was up with me and she wanted to paint. And so sometimes, it's funny because some of my paintings from a few years ago, every single one, if you were to flip it over, there would be all these little kid paintings on the backside of the canvas, like scribbles and, little princesses painted by, my 3-year-old at the time, because that's how you get it done.
Right.
And so it means a lot more ruined kids' clothing. Right. And it also means sometimes, something that I was maybe attached to in a piece getting painted over. Right. But that's kind of our story and how we've kind of figured it out. Right.
That's adorable and kind of like a really endearing little touch. I mean, for there to be these scribbles on the back.
Well, that's what I always hope. It's like people flip it over and they're like, "Oh, great," rather than, "Oh, this has been ruined."
Right. And do you ever get down on yourself though? I mean, for wanting to get more done or just not being able to spend enough time out here?
I am hopelessly optimistic as to what I can get done in a day. I would say on any given day, my list is about 10 times longer than what I actually accomplish.
Sure.
But the amount that I actually accomplish is still impressive by most standards, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, I guess.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. There's probably a degree of that in all of us. Tim, lyrically, is that all you, or do you guys collaborate on the themes of albums or lyrics themselves?
So I'll do the majority of the lyric writing, but the themes are decided by Betony and I as we were driving home to Kansas in the car, and when we came up with Almanac, I think it was almost all of our themes are when we're driving the car, because it's the time we can talk.
Right. Yeah.
We'll do these drives back to Kansas and to visit family, because both of our families are like 30 minutes apart, and some of our best conversations have happened in those drives.
Yeah.
But finding the central idea will be what drives the projects, but then Betony might take it in a really different direction. The first album, we tried to pair a song with a painting, and it felt a little bit stifling after that, especially because the way that she works is process and discovery. And
Right.
and I'm
A little too regimented,
Let's
maybe.
be honest here. Tim is very organized and has it together, and I'm very much like, ooh, I want to do whatever I want to do.
Right.
yeah
Free spirit.
The writer Sufjan Stevens is an artist who he'll do a theme, like a whole themed album,
Right.
and that's always been how I've written too. And watching him do it gave kind of me permission to keep rolling, doing that kind of stuff. And so I would always choose a theme. Did you ever chime in?
Tim's mom, when he was a kid, did these themed Christmases. Like
Oh, my.
everything was themed at their house. And this was not the case for mine, but it's the best thing ever. It's like having a theme is sort of our like family mantra. It's like we have family themed homeschool, homeschool themes, and we do like themed playlists for every single holiday. I mean like Labor Day and Martin Luther King Jr. Day and like every holiday. And so thanks to Tim's mom, it's like themes are our favorite thing of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're big. And so the album that I wrote that was after processing death and grief and hope was called Frailty, but that was that was the theme of mortality. It'll be called Frailty, and then for Almanac number 1, we talked through what we wanted it to be about. Now I will at times be asking Betony, okay, what's this piece mean to you? What's going on in this piece in particular? And she'll start explaining it to me and talking about what she's been discovering as she's making it. And then I'll respond by jotting down some ideas and let little bits of lyric and feeling of the song come from that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have there been periods where one or both of you, maybe at separate times, felt stagnant in your work, just like nothing was coming? And second part of that question, where do you get not inspiration from, but just what gives you life and gives you a reset or rest and refreshment?
Good question. The first is have there been places where we feel stagnant? And I don't know about stagnant, but this most recent project was hard for us to get on the same page.
Okay.
And I think it's because a part of it is the language of belief is really, really difficult if you're not sticking to that binary world of I'm in, you're out. This is what I believe. This is what we've discovered about the nature of the universe and life and humanity and God. And and so I've for me in creating this most recent project, Bellwether, Krista Tippett of On Being, the podcast, has been really helpful for me of being able to like, oh, okay, I don't have to be so clear cut with heavy knives on how I believe and what my answers are. But when we started the process for Bellwether, you were kind of like, I don't know, that you were, the last thought there was, I had, because of kind of the multi-layered conversations, I had different approaches to the album.
Yeah.
And one was a feeling of cathedrals, and so that's how the album became separated for me into 3 different distinct tracks, was the sacred spaces we encounter in life. Mm-hmm. And so the first movement is cathedrals, and the second movement is dark fields, and the third movement is tables. And so it was trying to get some language towards how do we approach belief, but it took me being able to find those sacred spaces to actually be able to write and free myself up, because I couldn't pin it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of decided that this most recent project was going to be about belief. Partly, I agreed to it because I've been in this really apathetic place of I don't really care. I don't really care what I believe. I don't really care to explore it. It doesn't really matter to me. And so then, and Tim, who works for a church, is much more comfortable navigating those fields. Whereas, like, by the way, my family comes from like very atheist, very like, or at least agnostic, lives in the middle of Bible Belt, Kansas. And so
I was going to say in that territory.
I have this like guttural reaction against certain parts of Christianity or really, and more just for my own, like almost like a protective instinct for my family sort of a thing. Yeah. And so, deciding to do this series, from a semi-Christian perspective about belief, like, was really hard for me because I just didn't want to go there and I didn't want to explore those realms. And so I definitely drug my feet a whole lot. So Tim kind of had his whole side sort of written, finished, and I didn't, and then I didn't, and I still couldn't do anything. But so then finally, and really procrastination and a deadline is really the thing that kicks you in the pants and makes you sort of get it all together. But what I ended up the route I ended up taking was exploring faith archetypes and how, but what I had to kind of do is find my own story within those. And so, for example, like this rising from the dead idea and this picture of Lazarus, to me, that became this picture of the prairie and how it, but also like my own family histories and like, Holocaust stories that existed within my family's histories. And this picture of rebirth, and life and coming out of, hard places and how, you can burn something down and beauty can still come back. And anyway, so kind of finding within these religious archetypes my own very personal sort of stories and experiences. And that was kind of the route I ended up taking. But yes, there are definitely very long slumps of no creative insight or spark and feeling sort of aimless.
Whenever I finish a larger project, that's when I stop writing.
Yeah. That seems to be such a...
Yeah. Whenever they talk about doctrines, they always have to frame it in terms of a personal story, like in the conversation. So they'll invite people from Muslim backgrounds and Buddhist and Christian, Catholic and Protestant, but as they discuss their core beliefs, they have to frame it in terms of a personal story. Because when you say, well, here's the experience I've had with this, and this is why I believe in the Trinity, and like framing that, well, then you don't attack a human over that. You can attack ideas and your tribe, but once you're sitting in a room and explaining, well, this is like where there's a sense of safety there. It's cool.
Right. What was yes, where do you get life from and reset and, refreshment? And maybe that's just being a parent. Maybe that's just getting a good night's rest, Yeah. I'm familiar with both, so.
Funny enough, quiet is important for me. And silence. I grew up in Kansas with a family I have two older brothers, but they were out of the house. By the time I was around 5th grade, 6th grade, just because they're a lot older than me. And so I was alone all the time. So I'm really comfortable and just like feel grounded by being alone.
Yeah.
and so having a large family, it's actually quite intensive for me. And, but it just so happens that I commute for my job. And so that hour down to Denver and then back after the weekend's finished is this really wonderful, like, breathing time for me.
Yes.
And that gets me when I get home. Oftentimes I'll be tired, but I'll be ready for the next week with family, and it helps me out a lot.
I actually love making things with my hands.
Or baking things with your hands.
And baking things. That also counts. That are not for anything in particular. They're not for a deadline, not for just to do it for the joy of it. I also find being outside is really centering for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have and just, I don't know, just space. Yeah, space to have time with your own thoughts, and find myself taking progressively longer showers. It's like my one 45 seconds without children.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can hear my own thoughts for a few minutes.
Right.
Yeah, you learn to do without a whole lot with 4 small children.
Right.
It's like sleep, unnecessary.
Right. I have to ask, am I way mispronouncing by saying Betony?
No.
Am I
you
overdoing
totally have
the
it.
T? I'm having anxiety about how there's no H in there. I'm like, what is this name? I don't understand it.
It is probably one of the most... There's only 2 of us in the country. I'm Facebook friends with the other one. She lives in Seattle. It's a flower, an herb, actually. I have one growing in my garden. And it's very nondescript and unexciting, but it does apparently cure nosebleeds. And my dad was a botanist, so
okay.
I am one of only 2 in the country.
Fascinating.
And everyone thinks it's Bethany, and it's not.
Oh, of course, yeah. For your whole life, I'm sure.
And you're Joss, right?
Yeah, just J-O-S.
Joss.
Yeah.
Am I
That
pronouncing
one's
that
easier
right?
to pronounce, yeah. I've learned it's just better to draw attention to those things instead of gloss over them and
Right.
be like, I
No,
don't know.
that's right.
Now I'm just like, hey, I'm flawed. Am I getting this wrong?
Yeah.
As we're wrapping up here, because I know you guys have to go, where is the best place for people to find you on the interweb?
Yeah, giantsandpilgrims.com.
Yeah.
It has, there's a page that we've put together that's just albums and art, and they can actually go and listen to the album, and then right next to it is all the thumbnails of the paintings. And so they can just click on it and expand them to take a look at them.
Awesome. And Betony, see, now I'm overthinking it. Is all of your work on that site, or is there more of it elsewhere? Just images of...
I have some older stuff on Etsy as well, and I think my Etsy shop is Graysparrow only, just because that was a million years ago, and it's too hard to change it. Yeah. So yeah, I have some older pieces there, but just prints.
There's prints of all the work too.
Yeah, and there's prints available. I don't know that I actually have any originals. I do have a few originals still. I think I sold most of them from the series, but I have a few left, but I don't usually list those on my website. Yeah. So people have to try a little harder if they want to get an original.
Gotcha. Yeah. Final question. In doing this, and at the beginning we talked about how it's just not, of course, not for money or for success or notoriety or anything, but what has been maybe one of the most surprising things of someone reaching out to you in response to your work that it affected them? You know, someone that you did not know, if anything. There
was a man about my age that came and talked to me at a music festival that we were playing at, and he said, "Oh, we love your song, Rally Those Hopes." He said, "My nephew was diagnosed with cancer, and so we made a playlist called Rally Those Hopes and put your song on there, and it's meant a lot to us over the years." And so that's just so honoring to work on something and then to have someone bring their own story to it, and to have that be some sort of balm or some sort of, I think music can be healing like that. It can be a space to be sad, appreciative, joyful, all at once. And so for something that you've made to be a part of that is really special.
Yeah, in terms of the low spots of making and choosing this path of like doing things as an artist, doing a show, or like when you actually start sharing your work, there's always a little narcissistic part to it in terms of, people leave comments and stuff. It's like, "Ooh, yay, they love my painting."
Right.
But at the same time, there is this, I feel like one of the deeper reasons is like what Tim's talking about, of like you're able to, it goes back to that universal truth idea of you're able to connect with people on stories. And, I've had just incredible conversations with people that I barely knew because a piece spoke to them in a certain way, or they opened up and shared with me, something that it meant to them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love that idea of like the universal, the thing that's most personal is most universal. Because it's like that line. Now Tim, you can help me on the reference, but it's like the most powerful 2 words in the human language are me too. And so it's like when you share something or some hardship or some, struggle that you're going through, and you're willing to be open and honest about it and talk about it, immediately, people come alongside and they say, oh, me too. I thought I was alone in that, and I'm not.
Yes.
And that's kind of the beauty of it. And that's at least where I want to go with my art. And so I don't, I want to find ways to open those doors to those conversations and to that connection.
Yeah, that's such a lovely reality of art that because someone would have never presumably gotten to those places in you by just coming up and being like, hello, my name is Josh, like, let's have some small talk, but instead something that you made that has no words connected with them. Anyway, it's wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for having me to your home in this amazing studio that I wish our listeners could see, because I want to go like read a book there and then like draw something over here and play some music. Anyway, it lends well to creation. Yes. So anyway, but thank you both. And I hope our listeners go check out your work. I'm sure they will.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey guys, I want to mention the fact, so Betony makes reference to several specific paintings of hers throughout the course of the conversation. I got pictures of all of those paintings and put them on inkandecho.com, just on the homepage. So
nice.
I'd encourage you, go there and look at those specific works she was talking about. But then I also put a link to giantsandpilgrims.com where you can see much more of her work and hear Tim's music. So I'd really encourage you to check out Giants and Pilgrims. They really have cool stuff going on, as you just heard about.
Yeah. All right. Well, good job, Josh. Good on you for going on location too.
Thank you. Oh, scouting on location, Dan Rather in his young days. Yes. No, it's a lot of fun. Other than the whole carrying bags and cables, and the setup is a little clunky,
right.
But yeah, I love it.
Okay, well, so for this section now, I have a very interesting internet comment that I legitimately want your thoughts on, Josh. So
okay.
We're gonna do that right now. All right, so this is an email, but I'm still putting it in this
internet email.
That's redundant, isn't it? Internet emails. Okay, so here's the context. So just this past week, I put my new album up for pre-order on Bandcamp, which it hadn't been previously. And what happens is anyone, and this is completely apart from my mailing list, anything that I have any control over. Whenever I put something new up on Bandcamp, anyone who's previously bought anything from me gets notified automatically. So, like I said, it's not my doing. It's just a part of the Bandcamp platform. That's what happens.
Sure.
So, So I put this up on Friday. I get this email back later that day. So I'm not going to say who this is or whatever. I'm just going to read it to you, and I want your reaction, Josh. So it says, "Hi. Thanks for sending me the link to your recent release on Bandcamp. Like you, I have music available for download from Bandcamp. Check out the relevant page." And then he puts his Bandcamp link. "It would really be nice if you would check out my music. We artists should really stick together. If you are not happy to do, then please feel free to remove me from your mailing list. No harm done." And then regards, and the guy's name. So Give me your thoughts on that, Josh.
So wait, is he saying, if you don't check out my music, go ahead and take me off of your mailing list?
Yes.
Wow, interesting.
So I've had this happen a few times before in different ways, and it always fascinates me because I guess there's people out there who feel like, I mean, we're in some club and we all owe each other something purely based on the fact that we're creating art. And like, that's it. Like I automatically owe him something because Bandcamp sent him an automated email that I had zero control over. And I should say, I have no idea who this guy is. Never had any interaction with him before. But I just don't know. Like, do you feel like you've ever had that inclination to try to, I mean, is there any other way to say it than like threaten someone? Like, I just don't understand what the end goal is here when people do this kind of stuff, you know?
Right. Yeah, that is very odd. And I mean, he's not realizing if he did that with every quote unquote artist out there, he'd be bankrupt. Like, he wouldn't have enough time to check out every, there's way too many for it to be a specific community.
Well, I mean, he seems to be misunderstanding what happens on Bandcamp too. Like, I don't know if he thought I specifically sent him an email.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
That could be, right?
But even still,
dumb.
well, the fact that he got the email means he's downloaded something from me previously.
Okay.
So he came to me somewhere in the past for some reason that I don't know, and now wants to leverage that somehow against me.
Sure.
I mean, I'll go back to my question. Like, is there any reason I should not feel threatened by this? It feels like a threat in a weird way, which is not how you want to network with other artists.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
geez.
I mean, threat seems like a strong word for that, but yeah, he's still saying, like, either you're a fan of mine and we're mutual fans of each other, or I'm out of your thing. Like, I no longer like your thing, which makes no sense.
Yeah. And it's complete. It's a weird thing where it's like, we've got to support each other completely regardless of the quality of the artwork we're creating. Like, I have to like what this guy's doing for some reason I don't understand without even hearing it. And I don't know. This kind of could go into the realm of, like, people say, support local music, like, support your local indie rock band or whatever. I'm like, well, I mean, sure,
like, regardless if they're good or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's
them.
like,
yeah.
That's a good sentiment, I guess. But I'm like, don't just tell me I should like art for anything other than the quality of the art. I mean, that seems like a tactic, a guilt tactic. That's a better way to put this. I don't ever guilt anyone into liking your art, because that's not how people stick around. That's not how he's going to grow any sort of anything. It's just, and it's such a strange impulse, because I feel like he's not looking even one step ahead and being like, okay, what does this look like? What does this mean for me? Like, I don't know what this guy does to other artists or people, but not 100%.
But he chose the wrong guy to send an email to.
He sure did. You're on my damn podcast now. So I don't know. Like I said, I've had this happen a couple times where people try to guilt me into supporting them purely because they did something to me that I had no control over them doing, which is strange. So I guess the lesson is, listeners, do not do this. Don't. Your art needs to stand on its own. No one owes you anything. I don't owe this guy anything, and he doesn't owe me anything. So
yeah,
that's how this works, kids.
The moral of the story is, listeners, if you're a musician, send Andy an email and say, listen to this, or I'm quitting listening to Ink and Echo. Like, and that's final. That's the guilt tactic.
Yeah.
I had the closest thing I've had to that happening is that I had two guys reach out to me who had backed my Kickstarter two people I did not know. And shortly after it was successful, they emailed me and they were like, "Hey, really excited about your film. Would you come look at my Kickstarter and consider backing it?"
Man.
And I went ahead and looked at both. And
these are two separate people
yes,
doing the same thing. Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, you know, I took it with a grain of salt. I was like, you never know, maybe they're making something badass.
Right, totally.
So I looked, and they were not badass projects. they looked quite bad, actually. And so I mean, I just didn't respond. But what a weird thing. It's like, well, I mean, I'll still gladly take your money, you know, because before the assumption would be you thought this was a cool project, so you backed it. But it's like, well, was that the whole intent?
Right.
From the start? I mean, which seems kind of backwards. It's like, why don't you just keep your money and pay it to your own Kickstarter?
Exactly. Well, like conditional payment for my art is like, I will reject that all day. Like, I'm just remembering now, like when I released one of the albums for my kids, they're all like pay what you want, free if you wanted it. I had a guy comment on my Facebook post and say, "I will give you money for this album if you promise to put it in a college fund for that child."
Oh my gosh.
I was like, "No, that is not what this is." Like,
goodness sakes.
Like first I have to feed this kid for 18 years. How do you feel okay about taking care of that first? You know what I mean? Like I do not want your money if you're going to put conditions on my art. I guess that's what it all comes down to. So,
yeah.
And please, boys and girls, don't put conditions on anyone's art. It's going to make a better world for everybody. Believe me, don't do this. Don't do it. So,
strange times we're living in.
Yeah. Human beings, man. They're strange creatures.
It's like that Randy Newman song on Toy Story. Strange things are happening to me. Such a stupid reference. Well, that's probably as good a place as any to close out.
Yes, I agree. But
everybody, thanks for listening. Please go check out giantsandpilgrims.com. Go to Ink and Echo podcast for all your podcast needs. Got some new cat mugs thrown in the
pow! I just shit my cat mug pants. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Ooh! Look out!
I didn't drink a beer during this episode.
I didn't either. I had some peppermint tea from Celestial Seasonings. Bringing the taste of the teddy bear.
Let's just keep talking.
No, that's sleepy time.
Over this sick beat.
Did you ever hear the, Flight of the Conchords? They had a line in a song where they were pretending, they had a song where they were pretending to be rappers. And one of them was, "I'm the hip hopopotamus, my lyrics are endless." And then he would just stop right there.
Yeah.
Good joke, Jermaine Clement.
I feel like right now is like, I've never really understood comedians who just kind of get up and start playing guitar, but then all they do is say jokes over it.
Jokes
like,
over songs, yeah.
They don't even sing, though. It's like, what was the guitar for? Yeah,
gives them something to do with their hands. That snow endeavor is melting. That's the only line I had.
All right, great. So great.